beating death of a gay student in Wyoming.
Shepard's death drew national attention.
Signs started to spread across the country. Matthew Shepard, a gay 21-year-old college student, had been left for dead. The world was shocked by the brutality of that crime, and millions mourned. A battle against bigotry and a battle against hate.
This is the heartbreaking story of Matthew Shepard, a young college student who was brutally murdered because of his sexual orientation. What is a hate crime? According to the U.S. Department of Justice, a hate crime is considered a crime motivated by bias against race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. On September 23, 2024, the FBI released the hate crime data from the Uniform Crime Reporting Program. These agencies reported 11,862 hate crime incidents involving 13,829 offenses. 18.4% of those cases involved prejudice against sexual orientation. In 2009, U.S. President Barack Obama signed into law the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which expanded the federal hate crime statute to include violent crimes motivated by disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation. On October 7, 1998, Matthew Shepard, a 21-year-old student at the University of Wyoming, was brutally attacked and tied to a fence in a field outside of Laramie, Wyoming, and left to die. Later, on October 12th, Matthew succumbed to his wounds in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado, and was later pronounced dead. Matthew Shepard was born in Casper, Wyoming, on December 31st, 1976. Growing up, Shepard's father, Dennis, was an oil rig inspector who worked in Saudi Arabia, and his mother, Judy, was likely a stay-at-home parent. Matthew attended high school in Casper for 2 years before later transferring to an American school in Switzerland. Shepard graduated high school in 1995 and then arrived back in the U.S. to attend college at the University of Wyoming at Laramie. Here he studied foreign relations, languages, and political sciences. During this time, he was involved in the university's LGBT Student Association.
One night on October 6, 1998, Shepard meets the men who will murder him that same night. Shepard had attended an LGBT+ group meeting following dinner with friends at Village Inn. He was later dropped off at home by a friend, Kim Nash. At around 10:30 p.m., Shepard arrives at the Far Side Bar and Lounge in downtown Laramie and orders a beer. Less than 2 hours later, on October 7th, 1998 at midnight, Shepard leaves Fireside with Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, after being offered a ride home. It is believed that these two men had pretended to be gay men to lure Shepard with them so that they could rob him. On Wednesday, October 7th, at around 12:45 a.m., the Laramie police got a call about a disturbance in a neighborhood. When they arrived, two men were sitting outside of a truck, and when they tried to approach them, they ran. One of the police officers was able to catch Russell Henderson and send him to the hospital due to a split lip. While detained, Russell had confessed that the other man he was with was named Aaron McKinney. The officers secured the truck after the man ran to investigate it. Looking through the windows of the truck, the officers were able to see blood stains covering a coat, a pair of black shoes, and a credit card. Both the shoes and the credit card would later be identified as belonging to Matthew Shepard. They had also found a .37 Magnum in the back of the pickup truck covered in blood. They were told that someone had been struck in the head with a gun. One of the officers knew that something more sinister had happened, since one blow to the head would not have caused as much blood as there was on the gun and the coat. He had also realized that hairs were sticking out of the butt of the gun. At the time, the officers were focusing on the evidence inside the truck and finding the other man who had fled the scene. They did not know who Matthew Shepard was. Aaron Krefel's cyclist found Matthew Shepard tied to a fence and in a coma 18 hours after the attack. Kreifels initially thought Shepard was a scarecrow, but he knew it was a person once he approached. When officers arrived on the scene, which was a field outside of Lamar, Wyoming, they noted that his breathing was very shallow and required dire medical attention. They had tried to cut the ropes off, but they were tied too tight around his wrists. They described Shepard's face as covered in blood, aside from one spot where a tear had run down. The officers had initially sent Matt to a hospital in Lormai, but they had to transfer him to another hospital in Fort Collins because they couldn't treat him. After all, his injuries were too severe. When his mother arrived, she could only recognize him because of the scars that he had from chickenpox and a bump under one of his ears.
Matt had suffered 18 blows to the head and 4 skull fractures, one of which had crushed his brainstem. His chances of survival were slim. Even if he were to wake up, he would not be the same Matt that his friends and family knew. Once the Laramie Police Department knew of what happened to Matthew Shepard, they knew that both Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney had something to do with this crime, due to his credit card and shoes being in their truck. The police officers were able to find Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney's girlfriends. Kristen, Aaron McKinney's girlfriend, had told officers that he had come home late that evening, covered in blood, and told her that he thought he had killed someone. She told the investigators that he'd hid his shoes in a storage unit, which they were able to find with bloodstains covering them. They got a search warrant on McKinney's apartment and were able to find Matt's wallet in a used diaper bag, exactly where Kristen had told them it would be. They also tested the blood on the gun and it matched with Matthew Shepard's, as well as the DNA of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney.
In April 1999, Russell Henderson pled guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated robbery, receiving 2 life sentences. After a trial in October and November of the same year, Aaron McKinney was sentenced to 2 life terms for 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree murder, robbery, and aggravated assault. Henderson's and McKinney's girlfriends, Chastity Vera Palsy and Kristen Leon Price, helped in concealing and disposing of evidence following the murder. Chastity Palsy pled guilty to being an accessory after the fact and was sentenced to 18 months to 3 years in prison. Kristen Price pled guilty to interference with police and was sentenced to 1 year of probation. Aaron McKinney had told authorities that he and Russell Henderson had gone into the bathroom and made a plan to trick Matt into thinking that they were gay so they could get him isolated so that they could rob him. According to McKinney, Matt had tried to make a move on them and they had reacted in self-defense. Once Matt steps into the vehicle, they tell him that they are robbing him. Matt gives them his wallet, but they drive him to a remote location and was pistol whipped over and over again before being tied up to a fence. They continued to beat him after he was tied up.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson knew what they were doing when they assaulted Matthew Shepard. They were not acting in self-defense, since they had continued to beat him even when he was restrained. They had focused all of their hits on his head and face, a clear sign of intent. They had also hatched a plan to lure him out of the bar to rob him. Even after they were able to lure him into the truck and successfully rob him, as he had given over his wallet, they continued to drive him to a remote location and assault him. A letter Aaron McKinney had written to Russell Henderson was intercepted when they were incarcerated. He had written to Russell telling him that he was sorry for making him follow through with the assault. It is believed that Aaron was the primary perpetrator and had forced Henderson to follow through with his plan. According to his letter, he was drunk and had even pointed the gun at Henderson. Aaron could be diagnosed as a sociopath, as he did not feel remorse for his actions. He had stated that he hated homosexuals. He had manipulated Henderson into following his plan, and he had taken advantage of both Matthew Shepard and Russell Henderson. Russell Henderson was also responsible for the homicide of Matthew Shepard, but he did not display the sociopathic tendencies as did Aaron. Many years later, he would write to his family stating that there wasn't a day that went by when he didn't think of Matthew, and how sorry he felt for his actions. This had shown authorities that Aaron was the one responsible for Matthew Shepard's assault. In December of 1998, Matthew's parents, Judy and Dennis Shepard, founded the Matthew Shepard Foundation. The main goal of their creation was to spread awareness of hate crimes around the U.S. Through this, they were able to raise over $1.1 million in donations. Additionally, Judy and Dennis stand up for the LGBT+ community and express their beliefs in equality and acceptance. Over 10 years later, Congress passed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, signed into law by President Obama in 2009. Since then, this federal law has made it a federal crime to intentionally injure someone based on their race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. From their devotion to the Matthew Shepard Foundation, Judy and Dennis Shepard have made a great impact on the protection of rights for many. The Laramie Project was a film and play created to also spread awareness of the Matthew Shepard murder in 1998. This creation has also had an impact on the creation of the Hate Crime Prevention Act in 2009.
May I had hope for the future.